a short play inspired by true events by Gillian Daniels. Setting, September 1850. A respectable house in the greater Boston area. A steaming teapot sits on a small table with 2 cups on either side of it. Mrs. Webster is furiously looking through papers. Packages are spread across the floor. She's a woman of means who has fallen on hard times. Mrs. Littlefield comes to the door. She is a simply dressed woman of lower status, a swampy thief. She stands at the threshold, waiting to enter.
Mastodon bones. I can't feed our family on mastodon bones, John.
Ma'am?
Mrs. Webster continues to sort through her papers. She does not look up, but removes her steel spectacles and rubs her eyes.
If you're the new girl, so sorry no one is here to greet you, properly I mean, except me. I can greet you, but not properly. I had to let go of the maids and, well, everyone, really. You've heard of my husband and of the business, I'm sure.
I'm not your new girl, ma'am. Mrs. Webster, ma'am.
Mrs. Webster finally looks up at Mrs. Littlefield.
You're not Miss Tilda?
No, ma'am. I'm here to express my condolences over the late Professor Webster, ma'am.
Condolences? No one's come here to express anything of the kind lately.
Mrs. Webster pauses and puts on her spectacles. She looks at Mrs. Littlefield more closely.
Mrs. Caroline Littlefield?
Yes, ma'am.
You're the janitor's wife who testified against my husband, that is, against Professor Webster during the murder trial?
I'm so sorry, ma'am. I can't sleep, I can't eat, and my minister said that what that means is I ought to make amends, so I'm here. And it's awful, ma'am. I'm mighty sorry over the loss you and your girls have suffered, ma'am.
Mrs. Littlefield steps forward as if to comfort her. Mrs. Webster steps back.
Do you want me to leave, ma'am?
What I want and what I may have are 2 different things. I want you to leave, but it would be improper to toss out one of the only souls to express any regret over my husband's execution.
But you do want to toss me out on my ass, then?
Mrs. Littlefield.
I like things nice and honest, ma'am. There's no denying you want to give me a good hiding because I told the jury what I saw in Professor John Webster's privy. Ma'am, I was afraid. Ma'am, more afraid than I have ever been in my life. I've never been a witness against a murderer, ma'am, and I hope never to be one again. What he did was awful, and you're a victim just like the man, Mr. Parkman, but not as dead. And as I said, ma'am, I'm sorry. Now that I've expressed my condolences, I can show myself out.
Mrs. Littlefield.
Yes, ma'am.
You have come to express your regrets, and I have been an abominable hostess. I am not an Englishwoman. I am an American. We are made of more hospitable stuff.
Well, now, amen to that.
My eldest prepared some tea. I will pour you a cup, and then you may leave before my girls come down and see you.
I suppose I can do that. I like tea, even when it's warm.
They sit together, both visibly uncomfortable. They sip tea in silence.
I think the best thing to do right now is to turn the topic of conversation to the weather. You said it was warm out.
No, hot as blazes as hell, ma'am.
Oh, I see.
Ma'am, I know you're trying to be all well-bred and everything, but I'm not one of the ladies of the set. I'm no good at talking politely. All that's been on my mind is your husband and how that business went.
You saw him regularly at his work, I imagine?
We lived right next to the lab, actually. It was kind of a party, you know, when he did his chemistry demonstrations. Bang, bang, boom, whiz, bang, like that. And all those bright colors pouring out from under the door. His lectures were boring, though. I could hear him drone on through the walls like he was a hive of bees. Did he ever do any of that explosion business in your house?
I asked him not to.
Ephraim and I, that is, Mr. Littlefield and I spent our evenings cleaning it all up. We didn't even get to see them ourselves, just here. Unless you were a student, he charged you to come and see it all. Always looking to make money, that Mr. Professor Webster. I used to wonder what he spent it all on.
Among other ventures, a mastodon skeleton.
A what?
He took our money, and he bought the skeleton of a mastodon. And when he had nowhere to put it, he tried to sell it to his employers at Harvard. But they wouldn't buy it from him, of course, but now that he's been hung, oh well. The bones were just there, you know, so they say it's theirs, for free. After all of that. That college is full of cheapskates.
What's a mastodon?
I'd say sort of hairy elephant.
That sounds a bit like a unicorn, ma'am.
Do you doubt John? That is, Professor Webster would be seized by the urge to buy something so curious as the skeleton of a hairy elephant?
Oh, I don't even know, really. Improper to talk to employers at length, ma'am.
And yet, here you are, talking to me.
I figured I'd better start talking to people more than I do, even if we're not of the same breed, ma'am. That was the thing that cracked the whole nut open, after all.
The whole what?
The nut? We wouldn't have found anything out if Professor Webster hadn't come and talked to me and my friend. He walks up to the man, who he's never said so much as, "Good morning," to, and he looks a friend dead in the eye like this.
Mrs. Littlefield glares with Mr. Webster's eyes.
Right?
Yes. Right, I see.
And Professor Webster, well, he shouts, "Mr. Littlefield, sir, did you see Dr. Parkman last week hereabouts?" And the friend, who could be knocked down with a feather, says, "I did." And Professor Webster goes, "Where?" And the friend sort of motions around him and says, "Here, sir." And Professor Webster says, "When?" And the friend's all, "About 1:30, sir?" Which Webster is excited to hear about, I suppose, because he says, "Yes, that's the exact time I paid Dr. Parkman $483. Exactly 480. I counted it all off in front of him, right on in my desk. Never knew what Dr. Parkman had disappeared until I read it in the transcript. And then he's off. Like he and a friend talk like that every day.
Oh, John, you dolt.
What's that, ma'am?
Nothing. Mrs. Littlefield, I shouldn't be saying anything against my husband.
Till death do us part. You're parted now, ma'am.
Mrs. Littlefield! No, it's fine. You're perfectly right. My husband could be a distant individual.
I bet he was. I came all the way over here because I have a theory, and that's that cold men try to marry themselves to warm, gentle women. I knew you'd be nice enough not to yell at me, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Honestly, I've had so little company lately. His hanging was Friday, and it's been no one but my girls and I. Well, were you there when Professor Webster came up to your husband?
No! Oh, God, no! A friend told me when we were both in bed that night, and I looked over to him and I said, "He's nervous about something, I think, and has been in a tizzy since that man, the renter, Dr. Parkman, went missing. And feel the wall of frame," I said. He's had the furnace going hotter than the places of hell these past nights. So both of us stood up, got dressed, and walked down the hall to his laboratory. That's where we found the evidence. But I'm sure you read about all of that in the papers.
I haven't.
Not a one?
Well, I don't know if you have children, but I've been trying so hard to keep the news away from the girls. They thought of him, as silly old father, and didn't realize that his soul had a complex geography.
Complex geography? That's a phrase. I know there are some folks who think he was innocent, even now, what with him being well-bred. They said a frame and I were out for the reward money and killed Dr. Parkman ourselves. Or that the Irish did it.
Unless you and the Irish owe Dr. Parkman rent too. I severely doubt that.
Do you want me to go on, ma'am?
If I wish for you to stop your account, I will say so. I'll throw you out on your own. That is your ear.
Oh, well, all right. So, Mr. Littlefield and I go down to Professor Webster's room, and we turn the knob and it's locked. Which a frame and I just hate. You know, it makes it difficult to clean anything at all if the doors are locked all the time. Tell the frame to take out his utility knife and break in. "Oh, Caroline, I can't do that," he says. And I tell him, keeping some dead landlord in the privy ain't proper either. So he begins to pry with the blade, and thump! We hear someone in the lab.
Oh no.
Oh yes! It's Professor Webster. He stopped what he was doing, and a frame and I hurried back to our room. So we decided to try again, but not through that door. We had a chisel.
Are you saying you chiseled? threw into the room?
Right into the privy, yes. The two of us went down into the crawl space behind the rooms. I held up the lantern for him, and when he got tired, he did the same for me. The smell was awful up close, but not because it was human mess, but because it smelled of rotten meat. There's a difference.
What? Do you know how human remains smell like anyway?
My husband and I have been in all sorts of businesses procuring specimens for Harvard professors.
Sorry, what?
Your sensibilities don't need to be bothered by any of our side businesses.
I see. My husband was so guilty, a pair of grave robbers successfully testified against him.
No, not grave robbing. No, not exactly. Just finding things, like what my husband and I saw.
And what did you see exactly?
Mrs. Parkman enters. Mrs. Littlefield and Mrs. Webster are so engrossed, neither sees her.
It was a man's leg. We went for the police right then and there, and the marshal seemed a bit confused because he asked a friend if Professor Webster was in the habit of storing bodies in the privy. God knows what an idiot like that did with the remains afterward.
I believe, Mrs. Littlefield, they asked me to come down to the station and confirm it was my husband. I do not think the public fully believed me until my husband's dentist went on the stand to identify George's false teeth. I have been told it was a great day for the forensic sciences.
Mrs. Littlefield and Mrs. Parkman both stand at once.
Mrs. Parkman, oh no, I'm so sorry.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for your loss as well, Mrs. Webster.
The disaster we visited on your family, and I will have the money for you. I promise, I'll have it.
The money?
Yes, I'll have it to you. I'm so sorry that I haven't had it sooner. I told my lawyer I would. Did he communicate that to you? I promise my money's good, Mrs. Parkman. It comes by honest means.
I ought to be going, ma'am. Ma'ams, Mrs. Parkman and Mrs. Webster.
You don't have to.
No, I really must go. My husband and I are looking at a house in Western Massachusetts to buy and set up a home in. Thank you so much for the reward money, Mrs. Parkman.
Oh, the janitor's wife. Yes. Hello.
We really do thank you much, Leah Frame, and I'm so sorry for the late Dr. Parkman. I wish I had met him and not just seen his bare chopped up pieces of himself. You know, I think I've said too much even for me. Many thanks, ma'am, and thank you for the tea, Mrs. Webster. I'll be seeing you both.
Littlefield exits.
She's an honest soul, but perhaps a bit roughly worded. I'm sorry for. I can't imagine what you're going through, and I really can't. And
You've already expressed your condolences. I would like you to listen to me for a little while now.
Mrs. Webster goes silent. Mrs. Parkman looks around, making sure no one's there.
I hate what your husband did to mine and how he did it. I hate that my husband tended to the poor and sick, gave money to the needy, and was rewarded with it by being beaten to death. I hate that Professor Webster was a slimy, miserable weasel so obsessed with his image of wealth that he killed a man to preserve it. I hate what he did to me and my family. Isn't it enough that people die natural, stupid deaths all the time? Why would someone murder someone else? What sort of man would do that?
I honestly don't know.
You were married to him. Yes.
Yes?
You knew him the best of us, didn't you?
I don't know if I did. He was the sort of man who was very quiet when we first met. I used to read Byron, and I thought he was fairy-touched, an eccentric genius that I found all for myself. And I'm so sorry for making such a gross judgment of character.
Do you think I blame you?
Yes. I might as well have sanctioned it, man and wife. We are the same person, or were.
My God, what do you think I hate most of all?
Us?
No, what he did to you and your daughters. He lied to you too, didn't he? And he used your money to buy a mastodon skeleton.
You know about that?
Dr. Parkman was an alum too, dear. We all know about it.
Oh, John.
That's just it. Even now you are good and loyal, though it has gotten you so little besides the cruelty of a rotten criminal husband. So, I know I've presented it to you poorly because I have little command of my emotions in this moment, but here.
Mrs. Parkman gives Mrs. Webster a small purse. Mrs. Webster just holds it and gawks.
What is this?
It should cover the remainder of your debts, except my late husband's, which I have forgiven in total.
No.
It is the first payment of a trust fund the other ladies and I have put together. Eventually, I hope it covers the dowries of your daughter's will and that you remain in good health.
No, I don't deserve this. I can't take it.
You are not your husband, Mrs. Webster. You are a victim too.
Fine. But even if that's what I am, I'm not dead.
Exactly. Please take the money. You deserve to take care of yourself. Will you do that for me?
I think perhaps I can try.
Good. Come here, dear.
Mrs. Parkman and Mrs. Webster embrace.
I don't suppose you'd like some tea?
Mrs. Parkman looks towards the door as if she considers leaving. Then she looks back to Mrs. Webster.
Yes, I think I would.
End of play.